In my prior video on the Lord's time in the heart of the earth, called 3 Days and 3 Nights, I wanted to stress that the number of days and nights Jesus spent in the heart of the earth is very important. So at the risk of repeating myself, let me clarify and emphasize my points again. First, Jesus' duration in the heart of the earth was to be a sign to unbelieving Israel, and it was to be their only sign. That makes this a big deal. And the point of Jesus' prophecy is not that he will spend time in the earth, but for how long. Sorry, folks, we cannot disregard this. Second, the other point, which makes this duration time trackable, is that days and nights are mentioned separately. This is not our concept of a day, for we speak of a day as being 24 hours long from midnight to midnight, while the Jewish day was divided between 12 hours of night and 12 hours of day, or daylight. And Jesus specifically mentions 3 nights of 12 hours and 3 days of 12 hours. Don't brush this off. And in identifying the specific day on which Jesus was crucified, we must track 12-hour periods of night and 12-hour periods of day, or daylight. This is how Jesus stated his prophecy, his sign, and how Matthew, the writer, and his readers would have marked his time in the earth. Third, remember that the Jewish or biblical definition of a day ran from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. the next day. When the gospel writers mention the day of Jesus' resurrection, they call it the first day of the week. They don't call it Sunday. That's what we do. And the first day of the week started at 6 p.m. on what we now call Saturday. This time is also called the dawning or start of a new day. This doesn't mean sunrise. Fourth, let me reiterate that Jesus rose from the dead right after 6 p.m. when the Sabbath was over, what we call Saturday. And he rose in the dark, according to the Gospel of John. Chapter 20, verse 1 says this: "The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre." The Greek verb is in the present tense, while it is still dark. Mary finds the tomb empty. We know this because in verse 2, Mary runs to find Peter and says, "They have taken away the Lord from the sepulchre." So obviously she looked into the tomb and saw Jesus was gone. Finally, since we have essentially shown that Jesus would have had to have been crucified on Wednesday, we can thus identify the year that Jesus was crucified, because the Passover, which is specifically identified as the 14th day of Nisan, fell on Tuesday in 31 AD. And the Passover ran from Tuesday at 6 p.m. to Wednesday at 6 p.m. And this makes sense because Jesus was likely born in September of 3 BC. See my video on the birthday of Jesus. And since his ministry started when he was about 30 and lasted 3 years, Jesus would have had to die in March of 31 AD while he was still 33 years old. Isn't that interesting? Now, but since there are all kinds of ideas of the year of Jesus' birth and death, I just mention this because I find it very interesting. This doesn't change the fact that Jesus had to be crucified on Wednesday to account for 3 days and 3 nights. So people, based upon these facts, we can only conclude that Jesus was crucified on Wednesday. Let's make this the good day of the Passion Week and not Friday. even if your church has this wrong. We can be kind and gracious, knowing this truth, but don't set this truth aside because of the tradition of men.